on the public docket. And for those that are interested in getting a copy of the presentation, the presentation is posted along with the meeting notice. And the ML number for that is 14058 B as a boy 176. Although we intend to have an open dialogue, please take note that we do not discuss nor conduct technical reviews at this meeting, and neither Dominion nor the NRC are making any regulatory commitments. We now go around and do introductions, and as we are doing that, please take the time to sign the attendance sheet for the meeting. I'm going to pass this around. Again, my name is John Nguyen. I'm a project manager for SFST.
Jenny Chen, Summer and Confinement Reviewer, SFST.
Roger, he's the Chief of Criticality, Fielding Dose Assessment at NRC.
Joe Borowski, Thermal Reviewer, SFST.
Bob Einziger, Senior Material Scientist, SFST, and the Extended Storage and Transportation Program Technical Oversight Administration.
I'm Zian Lee. I'm a Senior Criticality Shielding Reviewer, SFST.
Jennifer Davis, I'm a Project Manager in Sheffield.
Keith Waldrop, EPRI, Project Manager. John Kessler, EPRI.
Don McGee, Riva Federal Services Project Manager.
Phil Losmack, Ariva TN, Project Manager.
Rich Dominion, thank you.
And Tom Brookmeyer, Dominion.
David Hamilton, with Dominion, thank you.
Tom Szymanski, Dominion Licensing.
Sylvia Salstein, India National Lab.
Freddie Hanson, Pacific Northwest National Lab.
Steve Larson, Idaho National Laboratory.
Mike Bauman, Director of Nuclear Fuel, Excel Energy.
Larry Creasy, Raver, Project Manager of Incorporated Detector Assembly.
Keith Lockheed with Department of Energy, Idaho. William Boyle, Department of Energy.
Rod McCall, Nuclear Energy Institute.
Pam Cowan, National Generation.
Terry Figgins, Excel Energy.
Wendy Davidson, Aruba Federal.
Steve Nosner, Duke Energy. Ned Larson, Department of Energy.
John Greaves, JCG Consulting.
Thank you. For those on the phone, please introduce yourself and also the organization you're with, if you're with any, and then also if you can send me an email, your contact information so I can include you on the sign-in sheet, please.
Okay.
Yep.
This is Richard Ball. I'm Energy Issues Chair for the Virginia chapter of the Sierra Club.
Erica Gray, citizen, Henrico, Virginia.
Kay Patrick. I'm from Pittsylvania County, citizen.
What's your name, please? I couldn't hear you.
Kay Patrick.
Thank you.
David S. Martin, Martin Image News.
Melissa Bates and Gordon McClellan from DOE, Idaho.
Anybody else? All right. A couple more items. In the event of an emergency during the meeting, please follow me and the NRC staff outside the building. If it is a partial evacuation of the building, we will assemble near the flagpole immediately outside of this building. Not building 1, but building 2. And if it's a full evacuation, also please follow us. But if you get lost along the way, we will assemble on Citadel Avenue, which is immediately behind the Metro parking garage. And the metro parking garage is located on Marinelli Road behind the 3 White Flint building. And please look for the yellow SFST sign. That's the place where I need to ensure that all our visitors have made it out of the building safely. We have been asked to mention the NRC safety culture policy statement at the beginning of each public meeting to remind the NRC licensees and certificate holders and the public of importance of safety culture and all we do in the nuclear industry. This policy statement provides the NRC's expectation that individuals and organizations performing regulated activities establish and maintain a positive safety culture commensurate with the safety and the security significance of their activities and the nature and complexity of their organizations and functions. And I have a couple of copies of the NRC safety culture for sure. If any of you are interested in having one, at this point in time, please turn off or mute your cell phones, and I would ask those on the bridge line to mute your phone also, please.
Mute on.
My division director just arrived, so want to ask to see if Mark has any opening remarks before we start the meeting.
Trying to finish eating the apple I ate on the way over here.
Sorry.
I'm going to chew and swallow quickly here. This is obviously an important topic for us as we move forward in monitoring what is going on with the Dominion project, and we appreciate Dominion's willingness to move forward on this project. We're also very happy to see in the slides that the gas sampling issue has been discussed, and maybe there's some solutions that have been reached on that. We're still very interested in that aspect of this project going forward, and maybe we want to talk of additional options that you may be able to think about it as we go forward. Again, we feel, based on the work that we've done, the research we've done, and our assessment of all the information that's available in the public domain, that long-term storage of hydrogen fuel is safe. It is robust for long periods of time. And we see this just as another confirmatory work, a piece of confirmatory work that will be done moving forward to assure ourselves that, provide reasonable assurance anyway, of the long-term storage and transportation of high-burn-up fuel. So again, appreciate Dominion's who signed up for this voluntarily, and appreciate the work that DOE and EPRI is doing and has done on this project, and we look forward to getting some great conclusions out of this going forward. So thank you all.
Thank you, Mark. Dominion, do you have any opening remarks?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for accommodating us and for the attendance here. It's well attended. We appreciate the opportunity to present this information. Again, I expect this to be one of several pre-submittal meetings that we would have along our path. This would be the first to present to you some notions and technical details of how we plan to proceed, and then we'll come back later as soon as some of these technologies develop and become more firm into the design. And you'll see a schedule at the end here that I've put together that lays out the whole project in terms of when you would expect to see a submittal from us and when we would actually expect to be loading the cast.
Thank you. One more point before we start. For the folks on the phone, can you hear us? Okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, reasonably well.
We're going to try to speak louder, I guess, if need be. With that, I'll like to turn over to Dominion to start the presentation.
Okay, thank you, John. Again, this is Tom Brookmeyer speaking, and I'm going to go through the set of slides that we provided, and start off with is a quick agenda of what we plan to present. You'll notice that there is a transnuclear and AREVA session, which is intended to be proprietary,
Transnuclear and AREVA have combined into one presentation, so there won't be two distinct presentations during the AREVA approach. Meeting purpose, describe a confirmatory data program, and just to give a background to the individuals here in case they're not aware of what it is this program entails. The storage of high burn-up fuel is ongoing, and it's done in a safe manner. But what this program is intended to do is to provide additional data, as Mr. Lombard presented, on a confirmatory basis that confirms the analyses that we've performed. And so we expect this to give a good broad array of data that can be used for future applications, and also to be able to just lay the groundwork and be that confirmatory basis for the existing analyses. We'll describe some of the high-level technical aspects of our licensing approach and the current perspectives that we have with our licensing approach, and then again I'll discuss a high-level schedule and be open to questions on that if you have them. The background, storage of TN32 casks with high burn-up fuel. Dominion has a very vast experience with the TN32 storage cask. We've loaded a combination of 53 TN32s between Surrey and North Anna. They're identical, and the process used for loading them is identical. We have 27 that currently exist at North Anna. And if you look at the picture there, you'll see the pad number 1 at North Anna, and it has 27 TN32 storage casks, and there is a noticeable location toward the top of that picture. You'll notice that has one empty location that is available for a cask. So it lends itself well to the ability to use a TN32 cask at North Anna. And the distinction is that the casks at North Anna are loaded right now with a low burn-up fuel, and just for the demarcation line, that's actually low burn-up is below 45,000 megawatt days per ton. What we're looking to do here is to cross over that boundary and put high burn-up fuel, that is fuel with greater than 45,000 megawatt days per ton, into the cask. You know, we have a good array of high burn-up fuel, and I'll explain that in a little bit more detail. The storage and the data to be monitored. What we're looking here is, this is a spectrum of the data that we plan to obtain during this program. And by indirect methods, getting the fuel cladding temperature. We feel that with thermocouple probes inserted into the cask, that we'll be able to get a temperature indication from the guide tube region, which can be extrapolated to the cladding. That's been done in the past with in the early 80s with a similar type program that was conducted at Idaho, in which we were involved. Also, we'll be able to measure the cavity gas temperature by having a set of thermocouples in a non-fuel location within the cask. So we'll be able to get a good correlation between cavity temperature and also the cladding temperature. We're also interested in the composition of the cavity gas over time, which would include any fission gases, residual moisture in the cask, hydrogen and oxygen. And I'll also say that the fuel that's intended to be stored into this cask is defect-free. It with no known defects, let's put it that way. The fuel's been examined. We don't have any indication of any cladding defects that would allow fission products to enter into the cask, at least initially. And so one of the ideas is, well, what happens over a long period of time of storage? Do cladding defects develop? This program will help identify that. And also we'll be able to get an indication of cavity pressure. Yes, sir.
I just want to know, when you talk about the pressure, it's only in storage condition, not in the loading condition, right?
I'll get to that. And it would be during the loading process and in storage.
The fuel cladding temperature monitoring is indirect. I mean, you're not directly measuring what's cladding.
We're not actually placing instruments onto the cladding itself. They would be inserted into the guide tube, so there would need to be some correlation to work its way out from the guide tube onto the cladding.
you mentioned the fishing gas, you mean it will be like a fine, fast, volatile, everything, or just pure fishing gas?
We're looking primarily for Krypton 85, which would be the only noble fission gas that's present at this point.
Well, when you do the temperature monitoring, do you consider, I'm pretty sure you have considered the outside temperature, the influence from the outside temperature, the fluctuation of a daily, monthly or season?
Yes, we plan to have, during the storage process, we'll have, of course, from the site monitors, we'll know what the ambient temperature is outside, and so we'll get some indication of how the internal temperature fluctuates with the ambient temperature also.
And the second question is, have you considered about the decay? Because the reduce the decay heat for a long time, that needs to be a big factor.
Right, and we would continue to take these temperature data measurements over a long period of time of storage, so we would actually see the decay process.
I mean, the decay heat is calculated, and you really have to factor that out in order to see really what's going on in there, to understand what's going on. Otherwise, maybe that's just the decay heat reduction would overwhelm the temperature profile.
We of course have the detailed decay heat calculations, and for high burn-up fuel, you'll see even a longer retention of that decay heat with the actinides. But we do have that profile, and that will accompany the temperature measurements. So hopefully that addresses your question. I'm not sure that I.
Yeah, it addresses, because as you measure the temperature actually over a long period of time, you even confirm the decay constant.
Yes.
That's also benchmarking how the changes.
However, from the thermal view, if you still use the decay heat at the loading, that is the most conservative, because you still maintain that high decay heat.
That's right.
Just a question on this. Has this project progressed to the point where you already know the correlation, the equation that relates the thermocouple lance temperature and the cladding temperature?
That's in development at this time. Yes.
So the radiation degradation of the instrumentation was also factored in. There's kind of a false. They're concerned about false reading of the.
Well, the temperature measurements, the probes we plan to use are those same ones that are used in reactor. So they are the Areva design. They're the in-core thermocouples, which is a much harsher environment than it would be in dry storage.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Part of the program also, and this isn't really part of the regulatory aspect, but it touches on it, but also want to make you aware that we can also have planning on some sister rods, and that would be deriving and obtaining some rods from fuel assemblies that are similar, if not the same, as those used in storage. And we plan to extract 25 at most rods and have those shipped to Idaho or some other laboratory for pre-characterization of storage, so that we understand what the cladding and material properties are in extreme detail, and so that later on after storage you can compare those similar characteristics to see what the effects of storage had upon those rods. We plan to use an existing licensed transportation cask. We don't expect to have any additional review for this. And some of the rods, some from the sister assemblies, may be rods coming from the cask, from fuel assemblies that plan to be stored, just because some of the high burn-up fuel that we have doesn't necessarily have a symmetric partner in the pool that's not going to be stored. They may have been center assemblies just to get to the higher burn-up. So we don't have the luxury of being able to pick true sister assemblies to provide donor rods. So. But the fuel selection right now is still ongoing, and we'll have more information on the actual fuel selection once that's completed. And we expect to have that done here first quarter of 2014. Of course, our ultimate goal is to in time to have this cask and its payload shipped to an off-site facility for additional examination in the future. This prevents re-wetting the fuel. North Anna has the capability to re-wet TN32 if necessary. We don't want to go there because we're concerned that perhaps re-wetting that may change some of the characteristics that we want to examine of the cladding. So we really don't want to re-wet it unless we have to. At Surrey, in the past, we did re-wet and unload a TN32, so we know that we have the technology and capability to do that. But we only want to do that in case we're in a situation that corrective action drives us to that. Transportation of the TN32 will not be addressed in part of this initial application. However, we will provide consideration to future transportation and the storage design. Specifically, if we need to have additional poison added to the fuel assemblies, we want to know that up front so that we don't have to go back later and try to get additional neutron absorbers in the cask.
So this transportation in the future, this transportation is still under the Part 72 license, like a short-term operation, not going to the Part 71 transportation.
If we transport, we would expect to use Part 71 transportation.
Yeah. Okay.
And that would be a separate application to come in.
Right. So since, that's something you might want to consider, have confidence in terms of transportability.
Where we are doing a set of bounding calculations during this phase to make sure that we do have reasonable assurance for transportability. But we don't plan on submitting an application for transportation at this point.
The baskets?
Yeah. Yet.
Yeah, because they do that down the road, but not yet.
Right, but if part of your plan is, to transport this off-site, you want to have a reasonable assurance that you can do that.
That is correct, and we are going to do those calculations as part of.
Well, in terms of regulatory confidence, so we haven't had a meeting on the transportability of TN32.
That's correct.
Do they have poisons in the basket?
They do.
Okay, so in terms of criticality, safety, structural, actually, that's the number one.
Yeah.
Can you withstand a 30-foot drop, all the hypothetical accidents?
Right.
Those are some of the things you want to do, at least come in and talk with us. And
we plan on doing that. To have once we have those calculations to come in and talk about that aspect.
Okay.
See, right now for the every contract, the department did not put the requirement to have the certificate of compliance.
Right.
In the next phase, first we wanted to get a load of with shipping on the next phase, but we don't believe that any of our actions will preclude the shipment of that cask down the road.
Yeah, I agree, but this cask was designed for storage only. That's the original design for this cask, for storage only. So I don't think the designers, TN, have ever looked at, and we have looked at TN40, we've certified. I think it's similar to this.
It's similar. I think initially the design of the TN32 was also for transportation. That was characterized into it, even though it was never thought.
Correct. But it was designed as a storage and transport cask. We just never saw the license.
Yeah. So we've reviewed TN40, we went through quite a lengthy review process on the TN40 because it was already loaded. It's going to be similar to this one,
Yes.
Getting it ready for transport. Those are some of the things, issues, the annual maintenance normally you do on the transport package. All the things come into play.
Speaking of transportation, I noticed I just had time to browse through your EPRI test plan, and it mentions that sometime out in the future, I forget whether it was 10 years or so, that ultimately you would like to transport this cask to a facility that's the fuel examination facility, I believe it's called, and that there are none of those that can do dry testing within the U.S., so you'd have to transport the cask overseas to wherever there is such a facility. Is that does that involve new risks? If this cask hasn't been certified for transportation, you have to transport it quite a ways. What would happen if your analysis suggests that might involve too much risk? Would you simply drop that part of the plan?
Who is speaking, please?
This is Richard Ball from Virginia.
As I mentioned in the beginning, I would appreciate the public to refrain from asking questions and making comments toward the end.
Okay.
Thank you.
In this portion of presentation, the NRC staff need to ask questions. There is a designated time for the public, to ask NRC the question, not the applicant.
And whoever, if anyone speaks up on the phone, if you could identify yourself for us, please, before you start talking, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
So I think this is obviously an important aspect of it, but we should defer the discussion on this particular topic to maybe a future meeting. How's that sound?
Sounds good. Okay. For the cask itself, it's a TN32 cask. It was initially fabricated to Certificate of Compliance 72-1021, so it's a licensed cask initially. TN provided a Certificate of Conformance for this particular cask sometime in the 2004 timeframe, I believe. It was not initially licensed for high burnup fuel. At the time, the industry didn't need high burnup fuel in a TN32, so it didn't seek high burnup. But it doesn't mean that the analyses for high burnup cannot apply to a TN32. It's just the way that the industry was at the time. It doesn't mean that a TN32 cannot support high burnup fuel. The lid will need to be modified for instrumentation. Transnuclear will discuss this during their proprietary portion of the meeting to give a little more insight into the instrumentation requirements. One good feature about this cask is that we don't intend to exceed the license limit for the 32.7 payload capacity, for 32.7 kilowatt payload capacity. We will have, we believe, sufficient margin to that overall decay heat power limit. There might be an instance or two where the 1.02 kilowatt limit is exceeded by some individual fuel assemblies, and that's going to be evaluated by Transnuclear's design and basis and licensing document. All of the fuel planned for storage will be 17 by 17 Westinghouse design type fuel. And this is really, there's a few features that make North Anna almost unique in terms of the capability to do this work. And one of them is we have TN32 technology, we know that, but also we have a site-specific license which allows us to take some individual process and specifically license an individual cask on a patent, whereas the general license process perhaps a little more difficult to do that. But North Anna also has a variety of high burnup fuel that we can obtain data from, including Westinghouse fuel with Zerlo cladding, Westinghouse with low tin Zerk 4 cladding, the Westinghouse with a standard Zerk 4 cladding, and Areva Advanced Mark BW with M5 material cladding.
And Tom, the different claddings, I'm not that familiar with your site-specific license, but the different claddings may need to be addressed in the amendment request.
It would. We'll take a look at what our license currently has and make sure that all these cladding types
okay, because we've
evaluated.
seen some of that recently for some
Correct.
specific clients.
Correct. Good point. Thank you. And as I mentioned previously, that some storage assemblies or candidate assemblies for storage will also provide system rods. We plan to backfill any open locations in those assemblies with solid stainless steel dummy rods. We don't have open locations. We also don't feel that provides a significant or a change to the thermal structure of the fuel assembly that's significant. This is a table of our candidate fuel assembly types, and of course the TN32 holds 32 fuel assemblies. You'll see here that we actually have identified additional fuel assemblies. Now this is really just the spectrum of fuel that we have that's